Where's Beach at? What's he doing? Was he out there?
He was just right.
Have we heard from Trey, Mayor?
Yes. He's not going to be able to be here. No. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Glad to see each of you here. Some of you we never have seen maybe before here at our city council meeting, but this is the and your LaGrange City Council. We meet here the first Monday of every month at 6:30 for sure, and then different committees meet here during the off times of the city council meeting to discuss city business, city issues. We have this special meeting called tonight. It's a special meeting. You can have a number of different subjects on the agenda. However, what is on the agenda is the only thing that we can actually talk about. We can't veer off and start talking about other ideas, other subject matters. So you can have 2 items on the agenda just as long as you advertise it that way, and then that's the only parameters you can discuss on a special called meeting night. So that's what we have tonight, is a special called meeting, and it's for one purpose only, and that purpose being for the city council's discussion of the consideration and the possible moratorium on data centers within the city of LaGrange. That's basically what this discussion will be about tonight, and each of you all will have a chance to speak and address the council. We'll start with actually discussion of what the moratorium is about, what it means in terms of what we would like to see in the language of the moratorium, and perhaps any discussion that the council wish to have. After we discuss it amongst ourselves to begin with, to the extent they want to, then I'll open it up for you all to come to the podium here. You don't have to give your name if you choose not to, or your address if you choose to. You're welcome to, but we do not require it because we don't want to have you here speaking publicly and telling the country where you live. We don't think that's right or fair, and however, this meeting is live right now on YouTube, so you can, if you speak, there's a lot of people could be watching you speak tonight, but I think, can't remember, we had a meeting, I can't remember if it was a city council meeting, we had 26 people, some meeting I was at recently had 2,600 people following us. I'm not sure, that was it could have been our last city council meeting, but I'm not sure. But we certainly want to hear from you all, and I'm sure the council would like to make a decision tonight as to what they would like to do in terms of this moratorium. So, but what we always try to do, we always ask you to silence your cell phones if you have one. So if you get a call, maybe you can step out in the hallway and answer your call. But what we always want to do is stand and say a pledge of allegiance to our flag. Okay, next we'll have Heather Woodcox, our city clerk. Please call the roll, Heather.
Councilmember Bishop. Councilmember Ricketts. Here. Councilmember Kinzer.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember Davenport.
Here.
Councilmember Powell.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor. Here. Trey is absent.
Trey Cameron's ever. Okay, we have 7 of the 8 council members present, and with that being said, we have a quorum, and I'll call the meeting to order. We have an agenda. Would someone, any council member, like to approve the agenda item that we have for discussion tonight?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion made by Laura Taylor, second by Kenny Powell. Any further discussion on that? If not, all those in favor of the motion, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, as I said, the purpose of this special meeting is discuss authorizing, this is what was advertised, the mayor to refer a proposed ordinance to the Planning Commission which imposes a moratorium on the acceptance, processing, and approval of all new applications related to the establishment, development, or expansion of data centers within the jurisdiction of the city of LaGrange for a period of time consistent with the concurrent proposal of the Oldham County Fiscal Court. I do have the latitude to possibly, I don't know if I will have to, call on certain members that are in the audience tonight. I might want to ask them to come forward and clarify anything that maybe the county may have done that we would like to follow. Maybe we won't want to follow exactly what they do, but I may call on a few folks if they don't come up themselves. So with that being said, Mr. Craig Miles, our city attorney, would you like to begin the discussion and the legal aspects of this ordinance in its present form, and any comments you might have regarding the actual moratorium itself?
Sure.
And I would ask you, each of you all, if you choose to speak, when you speak, please get your mics up close to your face so this can get picked up well on YouTube for the listening audience.
And Mayor, if I could, before we get into the legal, just kind of a brief oversight of how this kind of developed. The Economic and Community Development Committee met, myself, Trey, and Kenneth, and we discussed with everything that we had seen online and in the news and everything with the data center. Obviously, none of us are experts in this, so we discussed the need to put a pause so that we could better understand and kind of take a look at what's going on with data centers and how they may or may not fit in the city of LaGrange, since there's so much discussion about one in Oldham County just outside the city limits. So anyway, that's kind of where we started, and it's I think all the council members have some input on it from there, but that's kind of how things pushed along. And I think Mr. Taylor wrote the ordinance to get everything legally rolling to get this moratorium in effect. So anyway, just wanted to give kind of everybody a heads up of how we got to where we are before we get into the legal nitty gritty.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Beach,
Okay,
right
well,
now.
On March 19th, 2025, was the first official action in which there was an application filed for a, what did they describe this? Project Lincoln, by Western Hospitality Partners Kentucky LLC, to have a proposed land use of a data center. There's no definition of a data center in the planning and zoning regulations. As I believe this land is zoned agriculture 1 and conservation 1, or conservation. So it's one of the proposed, based on your zoning can have permitted uses or conditional uses. Permitted uses, you can automatically do them without permission, and conditional uses are required to be determined to be allowed if they fall within the defined uses that can be permitted with conditions, okay? So that's the function of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. And under the Joint Planning Commission concept that Oldham County has, there's various members. One member is Oldham County, one member is LaGrange, one member is Pewee Valley, and the other one is Crestwood. in each of those cities and have jurisdiction over the land within the city limits. And so it's a concept called home rule, which was adopted, I don't know, 10 years ago or so by the county, by the state. So now we only have the one planning commission, and that planning commission is the recipient of all applications. And so an application was filed with Oldham County, and under the possibility that there might be a flurry of additional applications, they might be coming in by the truckload. There was a tremendous amount of pushback against this after it became filed and publicly aware. And so Oldham County, in response to the residents and the citizens' outcry, decided to place a moratorium on any further processing of the application by the Planning Commission. So the moratorium is actually sort of like a miniature injunction against the Planning Commission, in which they're not to take any more steps on processing new applications for data centers in Oldham County. That does not apply to LaGrange, because LaGrange has its own jurisdiction. So it's the county's filed a proposed ordinance, and that proposed a 150-day moratorium. As the mayor read in to the record, the title of this is the processing of applications for the development or expansion of data centers and of any size, all private utilities, all private utility buildings, and all data storage facilities within the jurisdiction of Oldham County. And also, this meeting tonight is to decide whether we want to propose make a similar proposal, and we have, and that's what Jason Taylor has tendered. And so that is what we're considering tonight, which is verbatim from the county's rule or proposal. So then the attorney for the Planning Commission, Barry Baxter, has pointed out that under the zoning rules of KRS 100 subsection 211, any proposal to amend the rules of the Planning Commission has to be heard by the Planning Commission, even temporary rules. And so that's what we're doing. It's the purpose of this, is to, the KRS 211 says that it must be submitted to the Planning Commission for a public hearing. And then they will make a recommendation, not a decision, but they make a recommendation of approval or not approval of the proposal. So the proposal being for 150 days, there would be no more accepting or processing new applications. And so if our proposal is passed tonight, you all vote whether you want to make this proposal or not. I mean, the Planning Commission is going to decide it one way or the other, whether this is turned in or not. But as long as ours version is consistent with the county's version, then they won't have to struggle with, well, if we rule this way in Oldham County, but we rule this way in the city, it could create all sorts of problems. And so at least the two proposals, if we pass the one that's on the table tonight, will be identical to the one from the Oldham County. Okay, and that said, the legal issue that's involved beyond that is the problem that data centers don't fall within any clear-cut categories of conditional uses. The close, and this is not uncommon at all. I used to be the attorney for the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustments, and so it's not uncommon at all for the categories that are deemed conditional uses, which are on the right side of the page if you are familiar with the book. The conditional uses are not all-inclusive. They're categories. You can't have a conditional use for every single possible function that could go on. So they try to keep it within one column, and the closest thing that comes to a data center is a private utility. Because if it's a public utility, it's automatically permitted. I mean, you can put a public utility, if you wanted to put a power station there, substation there, you could do that, okay? But if it's a private utility that's not serving everybody equally, I mean, an argument could be made that data is a utility anymore, just like electricity, but that's just an argument. But the private utility is being, this moratorium applies to applications for public utilities, public utility buildings, or data storage facilities. Okay. Of course, none of those, data storage facilities, I don't think they're defined, so that creates another gray area. So all this is to do is to honor 100, KRS 100, 211, and send it to the Planning Commission, which is 15 people, comprised of members of the fiscal court and the four cities that are in the jurisdiction, have their own home rule jurisdictions. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Okay.
Beach, I have a question. On the, my understanding is that the conditional use permit goes with the person, not the property. Is that your understanding as well?
Repeat that again, I couldn't hear it.
Conditional use permit goes with the person, not the property. In other words, if you have a conditional use permit, say for a data center, and they sell it to somebody else, the conditional use permit for that property goes away. It doesn't stay with the property.
I think that's wrong. I think it's the other way around. I think it runs with the land.
What's the one that runs with the owner or the person and not the land? I'm sorry, I just studied all this recently, but it was a lot. It was like drinking from a fire hose, as a friend of mine says. So I remember there was one that stuck with the property and one that stayed with the person. So, and I thought it was conditional use permit that stayed with the person, but obviously I could be wrong. But
We'll get that answered here in a moment.
Okay.
Jason, okay?
Okay.
Jason Taylor, would you like to comment on anything since you were with the adoption and the writing of the ordinance?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. This was actually provided to me as the ordinance initially.
Please speak
Can
up
you
now.
can you hear me? Is that better? Okay. This was initially provided to me by one of our magistrates, actually, the document that was actually approved to send to the Planning Commission for fiscal court. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time making any changes. I just had to make a few here and there, and substituting fiscal court with LaGrange City Council. Changed a little bit on the exemption language just to show that this does not apply to prior applications and then other incorporated areas within Oldham County or any areas outside of the city limits. Other than that, I left it alone. We've got a blank in here filled out. My initial writing of this actually made it 240 days. Since then, we've talked about 150 to be consistent with the county. But I think that's really all I have to say at this point. I have a few questions as we move along, I'm sure, but. Yeah.
But you are saying if when the Planning Commission takes this matter up, both moratoriums that they will be looking at, one from the city and one from the county fiscal court, they will be identical, correct?
If we decide that 150 days is the day to fill in, and I've got,
gonna say.
sure,
Yes.
that, other than that, yes, they would be.
I would just think it would be somewhat difficult for them to be ruling that day on two different types of requests.
No,
Yeah.
everything else, the substance of the document is the
Okay.
same, yes.
Okay, any other council member? I'm going to call on a person here in a moment, Ryan Fisher, our planning zoning administrator. I just want him to come up and take what Attorney Craigmile said, and then maybe we can answer Jason Kinser's question as well, Ryan, on these types of uses when they run with the owner or they run with the change of use. Would you come up and just please tell us where the fiscal court is in relation to the planning commission, so everyone in the audience and also the council members fully understand what the fiscal court has done. Are you on, buddy? It's trying to come on.
Push it and hold it.
Yeah, hold it down.
There you go, right there. Okay, please, thank you, Ryan.
Technology, here we go. So Ryan Fisher, Planning Director, thank you all for having me tonight. I didn't know I was going to get called up that quick, but here I am. So Beach said a lot, so I don't know if I'm going to really remember all that he said, but he pretty much summed it up pretty well. The answer to Mr. Kinser's question, so conditional use permits typically run with the land. So after a conditional use permit is approved, we file that as a record within the county clerk's office, and so that runs with the land. We have started doing a few that don't run with the land, and that's like our short-term rental permits. When those cease ownership and change, home occupations, we've done that with here recently within probably the last year or two. We've started to put a condition of approval in those that the conditional use permit will cease with sale of the land. But those are really the only two situations where we've sort of changed that conditional use permit to let it run with the person. So for the home occupation and the short-term rental. So we didn't want, what we've seen in the past is houses that get approved for short-term rentals and then somebody sells and the next person can come through and, oh, look, I can do a short-term rental. So without that having to go through the process. But typically, and in this case, that would run with the land. But it could also be something that could be a condition of approval that you could put in, is that if the property sells, it couldn't be used as a private utility more. I don't know if we would do that in this case or not, if it ever does get to the Board of Adjustments. But other than that, I think he said pretty much everything. I know we've talked about what the county ordinance has been proposed to go to the Planning Commission. I believe Magistrate Woosley did recommend the 150 days, adding in the private utility use. So I think that is all the same as what you all have proposed. And just since I'm up here, I'll go ahead and say I'm not opposed to the moratorium. It definitely allows us to get our hands around the situation to figure out, what is going to be the proper land use, what is going to be the proper zoning, if and when these ever, do try to come to our community again, to get our hands around that. And that's just the question I would maybe have for the council is, we've started that process within our study review committee to kind of write up those regulations with certain things over in the city, short-term rentals being one. You all have some different regulations with your short-term rentals, with sign regulations. Is this going to be something that what the county proposes as a regulation over there when we come across the street? Is that going to be similar to what you all want? And if not, those are conversations I'd probably like to have through the course of that study review process to see what is palatable, what is digestible for you all to look at. But really, we're going to be looking at the zoning class of where these need to fit, and then other types of regulations, whether that's berming, landscaping requirements, noise, the hours of when generators can run. There's all sorts of a host of topics that we're going to be looking at through the course of this. So I think that's all I have. I'm sure somebody has questions.
Mr. Fisher, because I'm new to some of this, and so I'm sure some people in the audience maybe, and some people watching YouTube, and if you can condense it as much as possible, what's the basic process? Somebody comes in and says, I want to open a casino in the middle of a neighborhood. Now, obviously, a lot of people are going to have problems with that, but what is the process, and is if somebody wanted to build a casino right here in front of the elementary school, for example, what would be the process where the citizenry that's here now could say, you know, we don't want a casino there? Would that be city council? Would that be fiscal court? Or was it all on planning and zoning? How does that kind of process work?
Well, so it depends. Not going to have a very straight answer for you because, as with everything in government, we have all these sorts of different things. So typically when somebody comes in and meets with us and they say, hey, I've got this property in mind, this is what I want to do, we would look at what the current zoning is for that property and then what would be allowed in that particular current zoning. And Beach brought up, you've got permitted uses, things you can do by right. So for instance, if it's a residentially zoned piece of subdivision, you know, land, you go, I want to build a house, you go, okay, you can build a house, no big deal. And then there's conditional uses. So in some zonings, if you want to build a mother-in-law suite, if you want to build a detached, you know, accessory dwelling unit, you've got to go through a conditional use permit process. So that would have to go before a board. In Oldham County, that would be the Oldham County Board of Adjustments. LaGrange obviously has your all's own Board of Adjustments that things would go to within the city limits. And so that would be any conditional use in that particular zoning. So that's the first thing we would look at. And if somebody says, I want to open up a casino, okay, what do you zone? You're zoned R2. Sorry, you can't do that. It's zoned. There's not even a conditional use that would allow you to do a casino in a residentially zoned piece of property. So every situation is a little different. And so then you would go, okay, well, your option would be you could do a zoning change, which would then bring it before the legislative body. So if it was in the city, it would come before you all. It would obviously go through several steps before that. So we have technical review committee, then it would go before the planning commission. The planning commission, essentially what they do is they typically vote on the development plan of a project. And so use the casino analogy, they would vote on the development plan of the casino. And then if it was a zoning change, they would recommend either approval or denial to the legislative body. So then it would come before you all based on that recommendation of the planning commission, and then you all would actually do the vote at the second reading for the actual zoning change. And that has a whole big process involved of certain notice and when the sign has to be posted and all sorts of things. So that would be the other option. But we would also have discussions of, hey, it's in a residentially zoned piece of property, you're going to try to do a zoning change to do a casino, probably not. So there's a gentleman used to work in our office used to use the term maximum discouragement. You try to maximally discourage an individual from doing something. But ultimately, if a person owns a piece of property and they want to try to go through the process, there's, you know, we can maximally discourage, but not always just say, sorry, we're not letting you do it. So. Because then we get into the whole land use and land right debate.
Ryan, can I ask you a question just regarding procedure? Because I know this hasn't come up a whole lot, obviously, with these issues. And so my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if we're looking at this as a first reading today, we're not taking any action as a council. But then if there is a motion to, you know, send this to the Planning Commission for further review, depending on what they do, it would come back to us for a second reading and public hearing. Is that your understanding?
So yeah, so the way the one in the county is currently working, and we just, you know, put out our agendas today, so that moratorium is on the Planning Commission for the end of the month. They will simply have that public hearing and recommend it for approval or denial back to fiscal court. So I'm guessing that it would work the same way here. Obviously, right. City attorney would counsel me more in that matter because I'm not an attorney, but that it would work the same process.
Okay.
So a recommendation would be made, but it would ultimately be up to either fiscal court or the council, depending on whether you're city or county. Is that
right? The legislative body, yeah.
Safe to say? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
I think I'm right there, Beach.
What Jason Taylor just asked you, though, I thought the vote of the fiscal court was asked for Planning Commission to accept their request to impose a moratorium for 150 days. Sounds like to me you just said you might be considering this as a first reading tonight, which it's going to, after it comes back from Planning Commission, we still have to have a first reading of an ordinance and then a second reading and a public hearing thereafter. Well, I understand it.
Well, I don't want to answer the question for what you all are going to decide tonight on whether or not this is a first reading. I don't think that's right.
It's not.
But as far as what Mr. Baxter has told me is that will go to the Planning Commission for the county's moratorium at the end of the month, and then they will recommend whatever they're going to recommend, their decision back to fiscal court for their ultimate approval of or denial of the moratorium at the county level. So if that process holds true, I would think that that would be the same for LaGrange, but I'll just do what I'm told by
I mean,
attorneys.
this tonight, I don't even see an ordinance number on it, so this is not considered a first
Well,
reading.
it was ordinance 3-2025 until Mr. Craigmile changed it to proposed ordinance. So as part of my introduction of this ordinance, I would also refer to it as ordinance 3-2025 for a first reading tonight. But we're not taking any action tonight anyway, so it's more of a procedural issue.
Well, we're going to be voting whether to send this on to the planning commission tonight, one way or another.
Right.
But the question, as I understand it, this was not to be considered a first reading. This was to be considered a discussion, because even at fiscal court, Barry Baxter would not let them even have a first reading, I don't believe. I think their first reading comes after you all actually send it back to them.
Correct. That's the way I understand it. And what they did at fiscal court the other day, and Magistrate Jeffries is here, I don't know if his recollection is better than mine, but what they did was essentially just make a motion to send it to the planning commission for their moratorium discussion and public hearing, and then it would come back to them. So,
Would it come back to them for a first and second reading, or just a second reading and public hearing? And Mr. Jeffries can answer that if he'd like.
I don't know.
It
I wouldn't want to answer that without Mr.
It comes
Baxter.
back to the independent bodies for approval. And then that's the way that zoning, this is a map, an amendment, a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. Okay, so we can't just impose this stuff. Okay, we have to, a moratorium is not what everyone thinks it is. Okay, it's just basically, like I said, it's a miniature injunction against the planning commission from doing what they have their power to do. I mean, they have the power to just go ahead and process these. But we're asking them, we're requesting that they just hold off for 150 days. That's all that, but we can't just order them. We don't have power over the planning commission. They're special purpose government entity that has their own powers and rights, and they don't just serve the function of the mayor or the county judge or the council members or magistrates. There's a process, and it's just a procedural thing. And if you're in a hurry to get this moratorium passed, we can call a special meeting a day before we have the second reading. So. And what would you do if the planning commission comes back and says, we think your moratorium is overreaching?
Well,
It's
nothing
like
would happen.
you've added data storage facilities. I mean, that covers every business in the world has a data storage center, has a data center in it. Every bank has a data center, or would you say that a bank can't come in because they've got a data center? I mean, what if they pick up on that, or they just make that fine distinction? I don't see why we want to write the ordinance before it's the cart before the horse. I mean, the procedure says you do it the way we're trying to do it. And that's just send it to the planning commission, get them to rule on it, and then we can pass an ordinance with an intelligent, factual-based decision on data centers, rather than what we think data centers are. And I was IT for 20 years, and
That's not what we're talking about.
Data centers could not. There's no definition of it.
I know, but that's the issue.
All the more reason to have a moratorium till we do understand it, though, I think. It's,
Hold on.
however, we need to get there.
Excuse me. Ryan, when does the 150 days begin? Right now, with the way the schedule is, when does the 150 days begin?
So it would be my understanding that after fiscal court votes on it, which if it's like typically we would do with things, it would be 2 readings. Fiscal court obviously meets twice a month, which helps a little bit in the county sense. But you would look at planning commission, would look at it at May 26th, maybe. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but whatever the 4th Tuesday of May is. That would be about a week turnaround to try to get it on that first meeting at fiscal court. So that sometimes is a little tough because there's notice requirements and things like that. But you're looking if I had to guess, the second reading would fall that first meeting of July. Whatever that first Tuesday of the month is, would be probably a legitimate answer.
Ryan, you're suggesting then the first reading of the fiscal courts would be in June, and then July would be a second reading, is what you're at least suggesting. And so along those lines, if we were to refer something to the Planning Commission this evening, would it follow, at least in terms of the Planning Commission review, that same time frame where they would look at that at the end of May?
Yeah, and I would want to check with the county attorney on that, because we have, noticed already for, as far as putting it on our agenda, that whether or not, if you all choose to move this forward, we could add on your all, since it did occur after we've made that notice. I mean, you're still talking, tomorrow's May 1st, the meeting's May 26th. We can simply make that adjustment on the
Okay.
agenda. In my mind, we could.
Okay.
And add on there then the Planning Commission to hear the proposed moratoriums for both County Fiscal Court and LaGrange at that same hearing. So,
And the ruling or the opinion of the Planning Commission would be about a week later, you said? Is that
well,
right?
I mean, they would make their decision that day at
Okay.
that meeting, unless for some reason it got tabled, which I wouldn't expect that, but
Okay.
they would typically make the ruling that day. It's a tight turnaround when you're talking that last meeting of May, and then your all's meetings are always the first Monday of the month, your typical meetings, and then fiscal courts is that first Tuesday of the month. So that week time frame is a tough turnaround to be able to do notices and things on the first reading. But in this case, I mean, there's not adjoining property owners. We really just have to kind of post it in the paper, post it on website. So it would be something I'd want to discuss with council on whether or not, because I do think it's a topic that we, the quicker, we can get the moratorium, if that's what everybody wants, the quicker we can kind of take a breath and kind of get our hands around what we've been given so far. So.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions for Ryan at this time? If not, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate
Thank you.
You want to stay around?
Thank
You
you.
want to stay around? Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate your input.
All right, any other council members wish to add anything to the conversation this time? Anyone? No one? Okay, we're ready to receive our first public commenter. So typically what we do here in this particular forum,
Want Jeff to say something?
no, I'm not going to have him say anything until he wants to say something.
Mayor, I have a quick question again. Apologize for being new. And who is on our planning commission for the city? Who are those folks that we're depending on?
Sarah used to live, she lives down on Kentucky Avenue. What's her name? Sarah Jones?
Oh, Sue Ann.
Jones and Tom Marsh. Tom Marsh lives in Old Anita Springs. Sue Ann Jones and Tom Marsh. Those are our two appointees.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. And this kind of works the way as most of it. You appoint them and the council approves. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
So who would like to go first? What we typically do, we give you 4 minutes, typically during public comment time during our regular city council meetings. We try to give you really as much time as you need. Don't want you to get up here and talk for 2 or 3 hours. We may get up and leave, but who wants to come first? We try to stay within the 4-minute time limit, and I'll see if we can abide by that. If we can't, then I'll ask you to stop, pause for a moment. Then I'll ask the city council, would they like to give you another 2 or 3 minutes to finish up your thoughts? So that's what we'd like to try to do for each of you tonight. So who would like to go first? Okay, I guess we adjourn the meeting. Come on up. Come on up, Mary Ellen.
Hi, Mary Ellen Kinzer. I don't understand why we can't have a first reading tonight. Then if it goes to the Planning Commission and they say, no, we don't like it, it doesn't come back for a second reading. But if it comes back approved by the Planning Commission, then you only have to wait, it used to be the 30 days for the second reading. And that seems like the more urgent decision, in my opinion, to be taken. I mean, I understand that the attorney didn't want the number on the first reading, but that was all the intent of the people that put it together. So I don't understand why not have a first reading. See if the planning commission likes it, doesn't like it, either it comes back, you only have to wait 30 more days. Second
You don't have to
question,
wait 30 days yet. They could have it 7 days later on the first meeting in June.
so you can have a second reading within 7 days.
You can have the second reading one day after the first reading, but the second reading has to be advertised, so it would just have to go into the newspaper
Which takes a
the
week.
Friday before that meeting.
Okay.
So that would just
For-
be another special meeting.
Right, and have another special meeting.
All I can say on that issue, Mary Ellen, I'm not sure why County Attorney Baxter took that position and advised the fiscal court, but I believe that's correct. And all I wanted to make sure why he did or did not just ask our counsel to talk to Barry Baxter. And I assume
Regarding, I mean, I'm not following
about
your,
not having the first reading tonight during a special meeting, and I felt that Mr. Craig Mile and Jason Taylor had discussed that, and there are many discussions in the last week or so about this was not going to be a first reading, but that's all I know.
No,
Okay.
I said that I plan to have a first reading. I've made that very clear.
so there's a misunderstanding, obviously.
We can call it that if you want. yeah.
Yeah, graciously, right.
Yeah, and the committee certainly wanted to push it on to the full council too. As the chair of the Economic and Community Development Committee, I know we wanted to push it onto the full council to get this moratorium rolling.
My
We are,
sec-
we
my
are
sec-
reading it, so we're actually putting it out here, so it's, we're
Great.
not taking
That-
any
my
other
understanding
action
was the
on
first
the
reading.
actual, we're not approving the ordinance or anything. That wouldn't be
Correct.
until the second reading, and if the planning commission
Correct.
shoots it down, then we would start from scratch, I suppose.
That's my thought. My second question is, if it's not a first reading and it's just a proposal to the planning commission, and let's say a data center comes in Monday and wants to do a siting in the industrial park or something, which is, I'm hypothetical, okay? Is the fact that we put the proposal forward, it doesn't stop anything, does it? If they put that application in Monday, they're golden. They're grandfathered, correct?
I don't know if it's grandfathered, but yeah, it's until there's, the planning commission has had an opportunity to follow the ordinance. I mean, the KRS, yeah, there's a period of time when they could slide in, but.
Correct. That's
Yeah.
my understanding.
But if we pass this, if we were to adopt this law today somehow, you know,
Well, you can't
it
adopt
would-
the law. All you can do is have a first reading, at the most, would be to have a first reading, which would have the intent of the city council. Would it stop it? I don't know. That's for two lawyers to get up and argue and debate with each other, right? Not me. But it would at least show the intent of the council to move forward with it.
I'm not an attorney, so I want to make sure y'all realize. I felt though, Mary Ellen, that Westburn Hospitality, they are in before fiscal court took action on.
Right, with the
Wait a minute,
county, with the
suggesting that to the
county.
council. And I felt I'm not sure that's the case, if there's another attorney in here that could tell me if that would be the case, but I felt when they took action that there would be no more, or at least they issued, maybe the county judge issued a statement to the planning and zoning administrator, there are to be no more applications taken for the time being, certainly within why is this going to the planning commission, 150 days. There will be no more applications taken, period. Now, I don't know if that's what legal ability they have to do that. Maybe some attorney in here knows, but I don't think myself that any more application can be filed with the county planning and zoning office for another data center other than the one that's already in the door.
Yeah. Not till it's a ruling.
So, Mr. Fisher, until it gets passed, in your opinion, someone could walk in the door tomorrow, file an application, and they would be in the door, correct? Is that what you thinking? I don't know.
Until the moratorium is passed, there's nothing that says that I have to deny them the application. But As we are now, it's still going to go through that same process this current one is going through, which means it's still going to have to go before the board for an approval through the Board of Adjustments, for a conditional use permit, and all sorts of stuff. So,
But I think what you're probably saying from a legal standpoint, you don't have the ability to deny an application that comes in tomorrow, correct?
it would be tough for me to do that.
Okay.
I
It'll
mean,
be tough.
without opening us up from a lawsuit from that side. So usually any way I go, I'm in trouble either way. So.
Okay.
The third question, let's say it
Welcome to
that way.
politics, huh?
Let's say it this way. Is there any legal ramifications, for instance, if the city council were to vote in any way that the mayor would issue an executive order until the ordinance either passes or doesn't, in order to give time, that in-between time of the second reading? Is there a way, would that count?
Not that I know of.
So the executive of the city could not say, pending this second reading,
I think there's, I want my opinion again, I think there's certain things I can do, executive orders to do things like that, Mary Ann, but I don't think I can go against law with just my own opinion to do something. There are
Well,
rights,
wouldn't it
there
be-
are rights on both sides of this issue.
Correct.
So,
The separation of powers doctrine, which I'm sure you're familiar with
Yes,
as a
I am.
county judge, is that the executive doesn't have legislative power. And that what you're suggesting is he exercised legislative powers, and so, no.
I guess what I'm saying is if the city council did the first reading and proposed that the mayor do an executive order, or that the city council, pending the second reading, approval or denial of the second reading, that no new applications could be taken within the city limits of, or for the city of LaGrange.
No, he doesn't have that power.
So the data centers have full authority to come in until there's a second reading, if there is a second reading that's
Well, it's
passed.
not full authority, it's their right,
Well, same thing.
I guess.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Could I ask a question?
yes, of Mary Ellen or who?
No, of
Okay.
something that just came up. Because the agenda for this meeting has it as is just discussion of a data center, and it's a proposal, can we change it to say this is a first reading?
No, I can't change that.
Since it wasn't
What's on the
advertised as
agenda is
that?
on the agenda. I mean,
Lucy, I'll just talk about the email that I sent out on April 23rd where I advised Beach and the council. So we can certainly talk more about this at the Thursday special meeting as far as procedure and the involvement of planning and zoning. But time is definitely of the essence, and we'd like to have the special meeting for a first reading of this ordinance on May 1st, as previously advised, and that was the understanding.
On May 1st, so that means at our meeting, oh, I'm sorry.
Today. Well, yeah, we were going to have it tomorrow, that's correct.
Okay.
And that's my point, really, is this time is of the essence, right? If the planning commission
But
likes
since-
what we say, we at least have the opportunity in our June meeting, without that special meeting rush, to put it up for a vote in a public hearing, rather than wait for July.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I would be all for just this being the first meeting, the first reading, but I don't think we can go against what is on the agenda.
And that's
And-
what,
and
that's
it doesn't say
that's what
first reading.
Heather, the city clerk, was told to put on the agenda after Mr. Craig Mile, the city attorney, and I'm not saying Jason Taylor agreed with that. I don't know if he agreed with it or not. But all I'm saying is Heather took and put in on this agenda exactly what
Okay.
the city attorney said.
That's just what I wanted
This
to-
meeting was to do.
Okay.
And that was discuss this ordinance.
Well, I mean, there was some discussion about changing it to the first reading. Well, I don't think we can because of that.
Mr. Fisher, you need to say something, sir? Okay.
At least I'm getting my steps in. So here's,
it'd be nice to have the facts.
if this goes to the planning commission, and I'll use this in terms of the county one, is that, they've recommended private utility, 150 days. The planning commission does have the ability to say, we don't like 150 days, we want to do 120, or we want to do 100, or we want to do 50, or whatever. And then that would go back to fiscal court. I guess my fear with this being a first reading, if it's going to be, is if the planning commission changes anything, would it then have to come back here for another first reading because things have changed?
Yes.
So I think that would be maybe some caution to put into it, just to say the planning commission does have the ability to change certain things in it, and then you have to come back and do another first reading again. So
That's
I'll just bring that up.
That's probably what Barry Baxter, the county attorney, made a statement to the fiscal court about when they decided to do this a couple weeks ago.
I have a question. So if the planning commission comes back and says they recommend a different period of days or some other criteria, do we have to go along with what their recommendation is?
No.
Yeah, I was going to say Beach can answer that.
No, we don't have to go along with it, but then it adds complication to the whole text amendment process, in which you've got two separate members making different recommendations to amend the zoning ordinance. I mean, we're trying to act on the same speed, the same process, the same mechanism as the county. That's why this is verbatim from the county's proposal. And there are differences between the way things are regulated in the county and the city. But for the large part, the county and planning zoning has the staff and the people that are interpreting this every day. And so the decision of the planning commission will help with us to understand what exactly a moratorium is moratoriating, so to speak. What is being prevented or allowed. And so, but what they recommend is a recommendation. It's not an order, it's not binding, it doesn't have to be accepted or not accepted. It is information, and it just seems peculiar that you'll want to make a decision now before you get the information. I just don't understand that process. It's like you've reached a conclusion already, and you just are waiting for the facts to come in, right or wrong. It doesn't matter. We've made our decision before we get the facts. So if you just wait till you get the facts to make your decision, it seems sort of more reasonable to me, more prudent. But I'm just a lawyer.
Hey, Beach, I have a suggestion that maybe will be a solution or a compromise to this issue if the council is okay with it. I understand our first meeting will be our meeting will be in the first week of June. And I believe you said the 26th or 27th, is that right, Ryan, for that planning commission meeting of May?
Whatever that fourth Tuesday of the month is.
27th.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't know if we can have just kind of an open agreement with the council that depending on, if the planning commission comes back and is in agreement with our language here, that we just schedule a special meeting for May 28th, 29th, or 30th, with the understanding that we would have a first reading of that ordinance, 3-2025, and then have a second reading in June.
I like it.
I mean, that way we don't have to call this a first reading tonight, and I think even Mayor Black mentioned that he'd be open to a special meeting, so just a thought.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Just for your knowledge, May 26th is Memorial Day. So you
So it's the
probably.
27th.
So
Maybe
it'd be
that's
the
why I'm thinking of
27th.
May 26th, because I'm off work. Maybe that's why. I had that on my mind. Sorry.
It's my birthday too, so I happen to remember that day.
Just go
If we
ahead.
did that, do we just make a motion to have a special meeting after the fiscal court were to meet or planning and zoning? Or,
I second.
I mean, I'm fine with that. I mean, I say that we just do that and go ahead and plan ahead.
And we can cancel the special meeting if needed.
Exactly.
I mean,
I second. If you're making a motion,
I'll
Kenneth,
make
I
the
second.
motion.
but we need to know what day, don't we?
So 28th, 29th, or 30th is what we would choose from if their meeting's on the 27th. So we want to do it the following day. That would be the 28th. of
Which
May.
is a Wednesday,
Which is a Wednesday.
I would prefer the 29th if possible.
29th, Thursday, 6 PM.
You all just tell me when to show up.
Is that your motion for to
I'll make-
set a special meeting for that time?
If we're good with the 29th, I'll make a motion to have a special meeting planned ahead for the 29th for a first reading after fiscal court and they make their decision.
At 6 PM?
6 feet. I make the motion for May the 28th, or I'm sorry, May the 29th at 6 PM to schedule a special meeting for a first reading.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion to have a meeting at 6 PM on May the 29th. Motion made by Kenny Powell, second by Jason Kinzer. Any discussion on the motion? Anyone? Any discussion? If not, all's in, go ahead and do a roll call vote, Heather.
Councilman Bishop,
Yes.
Councilman Ricketts,
Yes.
Councilman Kinzer,
Yes.
Councilman Taylor,
Yes.
Councilman Davenport,
Yes.
Councilman Powell,
Yes.
Councilman Taylor.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. At this time, Mr. Kamer, Trey Kamer, wasn't able to be with us tonight, but he did submit a statement to Heather and myself, and I'd like for Heather to read his statement into the record, just so he can at least get recognized that he did want to comment on this action tonight. Would you read it out loud, Heather, please? There you go.
He said, I am unable to attend this evening's special meeting due to a previously scheduled event with my family. I have attended other meetings over the past month that have been discussing data centers. As covered previously, the City Economic Development Committee met on April 16th at 4 p.m. in a public forum. One of the items we covered was data center moratoriums. Can't even pronounce it. There was a motion and a second to place a 90-day moratorium on data centers within the city limits. The motion passed 2-0. Third member was virtual and in transit and wasn't able to participate in the vote at the time, but would be in favor of the motion. The next step was to bring it to City Council. I am in favor of today's discussion and would support a moratorium to be submitted if that is what comes out of today's meeting as we continue to learn more about data centers and perimeters are being put in place.
Okay, thank you, Heather.
And
Okay.
just to add, John, I was the third person in transit, but if I would have been present, I would have voted with them.
Okay. Thank you, Kenny. All right, who would like to come up and speak next, please?
I'm Barry Laws. Just to give some perspective, I live across the 53 from this project. And to give some perspective for who's watching, the reason we're here is this is a heavy industrial proposition for our county. In fact, to my knowledge, it's bigger than anything we have existing now, and it's taller than anything except for maybe the prison at 75 feet. So it's an incredibly huge, 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 I could say that 20 more times and I still wouldn't get the point across. It's horrendous. It's going to affect our standard of living. It's going to affect our property values. Some say about 30%. I'm a real estate broker from California, get a rope. But I say that's probably about right. And we're losing sleep over it. This has been such an emotional thing for us. And the reason is because as well thinking as they were trying to do in planning and zoning, that they didn't recognize this as a heavy industrial project that's going into a residential, agricultural, and conservative district. It doesn't belong there whatsoever. So I'm cautioning you, and the reason I'm here is this anxiety is because we didn't take the time in the moratorium, which I'm so happy we're doing now, by the way, and I'm very much approved with everything that's going on with planning and zoning right now. But this is super serious. They're very smart. They have a lot of money behind them. They're telling us a lot of things that really don't make any sense. And if you read their literature, there's a lot of should, mights, You know, maybe at the best, running at 100%, you guys are going to get gazillions of dollars. But when it comes down to it, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and it's going to affect our lives. So I personally would appreciate it because I love LaGrange, and I play pickleball there every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak tonight?
Mr. Beach, I would take strong objection to the fact that discussion cannot include a first reading. Discussion does not limit first reading. Now, you guys have taken care of that with the motion. That's off the table as necessity be said. But discussion does not preclude it from being a first reading. Discussion leaves it open enough to be a first reading. I'd also take an objection with data storage facility. But you said that any company would have data storage and would therefore fall under that. And so you're saying overreach. The whole point in some of these data centers right now is to take that data storage off-site and put it on the cloud. Hence why we have to have a hyperscale data center. So the argument that data is being stored at banks or data is being stored at healthcare facilities can have lots of holes poked in it. So don't let that limit you guys on thinking that this is overreach. It's not. The other thing is that we have no definition of data center. Despite this being brought up in December, at the earliest that we know of, data center has still not been defined. And right now, any moratorium that is put forward without that definition opens itself up to being pushed right back. So, what is the definition of data center as the city of LaGrange will interpret it? I'm highly curious. The county has declined to define it as of yet. But it needs to be defined in order to be voted upon.
My understanding it's a server farm. Is it? Do you have a recommendation of? You seem like you've dug into this a bit. Any thoughts on how to define it?
Well, Planning Commission had a meeting just the other day, the SRC meeting, and they were tasked with the task of defining a data center. And
Yes,
that was like 2 days ago.
Yes, they were tasked with it. As of yet, that definition is not available to the public. If it has been decided, it's not available to the public. So, if you guys are passing a moratorium that includes language that is data center needs to be defined.
Exactly.
You guys need to define that tonight, please, in order for this to go any further. And whatever definition that the city decides upon will have great bearing on the county's decision. So we also need things like whether size matters, whether it's a hyperscale or whether it's a smaller data storage facility like already exists that most of us didn't even know about in our county. So that needs to be defined. I would ask that you guys all, before you leave tonight, define that.
There's not going to be a definition by this body night on a data center. We don't know enough about what a data center is to create a definition of it. So that's the reason the SRC has gone to work with 6 planning commission members to begin discussing through research and due diligence what in the world is a data center and what kind of definition are we going to give it in the planning and zoning code of ordinances, okay? So we're not going to sit here and come up with a definition tonight.
The problem would be that you guys are discussing a moratorium about a data center.
This moratorium includes anything possible that a data center might come with. I mean, it includes everything. So it's big, small, size of a cup. It's any data center. It's classified as anything that holds data. We're going to exempt it from coming in here as of this moratorium goes into effect.
I'd be willing to say anything that pulls more than a third of the electricity of the entire city of LaGrange. Anything that pulls more than that, bam, data center.
So anyway, we're not going to get a definition of data center tonight.
Well, the reason I say, Mayor, my understanding is that the current city of LaGrange with every school, jail, hospital, everything else pulls about 27 megawatts. And this hyper data center that it's just outside the city limits is 600 megawatts. So that if nothing else, we could look at maybe that, and that's, I think, one of many of the big concerns of a lot of the residents that I've seen. So that could be one. If we decide we need to narrow it down, that could be one way we could narrow it down is by electric draw.
All right. I would also say that I would expect that most of you will get emails with citizens' suggestions of what a data center should be defined as, because if you're voting on a moratorium to prevent data centers, you do have to have that defined. So that has got to happen. It is, I will refrain from saying that. It is extremely necessary. So what would be the process for getting a definition, Mayor?
SRC committee's working on it as of last week. That's their task, to come up with a data center definition.
But that's an Oldham County definition,
yeah.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying city council can move a little quicker than the county, so if you guys had a definition, it would certainly be influential at the county level.
And ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. It seems like you've studied
Sarah
this.
Little.
Sarah?
Sarah Little.
Sarah Little, okay. It seems like you've studied this quite a bit. I didn't know if you are an attorney as well, or if you just dug into this a lot.
Nope, just got a big mouth.
Same here. I like it.
Do you have an example that you would use as a definition? I'm only asking because I don't. But if you're asking us to, I would like to have a good starting point.
I have several. I'd be happy to email them to all of you. Wouldn't be the first time y'all have gotten emails from me, so yes, I would be happy to. There are collective bodies within the community working to get that definition too. But the big thing is that you guys can make a definition that would then influence the county's decision. And if you're going to pass a moratorium on something, there needs to be a definition of what you're passing that moratorium on. So anybody who's watching on YouTube, anybody sitting in here, highly encourage you to shoot
the American Planners
definitions.
The American Planners Association is usually the go-to dictionary for planning terms, and it doesn't even have one. So who are we here who are not engineers to define a data center? I mean, data is being redefined every day as to what it is. I think what we should focus on is not so much the unified, the singular application that we've received for use on Highway 53, but the purpose of this meeting is whether to impose this moratorium on the city of LaGrange. In my understanding, there's only one or two places in the whole county, in the whole city, it could go. So are we targeting those areas, or are they potentially exempt? If we have an industrial park somewhere, could we not have it there? But no, you want to pass an ordinance that would stop it everywhere. So we have to be careful about what the moratorium is preventing.
Okay, what are those two areas within the city limits, just so everybody's on the same page? What are those two areas that it could?
What?
What are the two areas that you referenced that it could fit within?
Well, I think the one area is actually in the county. It's probably off of Commerce Parkway. The other area could possibly be in Oldham Reserve.
You know, there's one other.
And if there was interest in Oldham Reserve and the city had passed a moratorium or a law against it, that could put us at legal risk with our business partners in Oldham Reserve and through an interlocal cooperation agreement with the county. So there are consequences to passing vast actions, as you know, as we see in the federal government now. When you take vast sweeping actions, there are consequences. And so we have to, that's why we need the additional time to do exactly what is in this proposal, which is evaluate existing policies, infrastructure capacity, long-term planning objectives regarding data centers. And obviously, the first thing that they would do is define a data center.
One of the things that is in that planner's dictionary is that multi-storied industrial buildings are popular structures for rehabilitation to residential activities. Adaptations include art galleries, selling books, computer data centers, per APA's land-based classification standards project. Multi-storied industrial building. So that, to me, by the planning and zoning dictionary, should be part of the definition. I would say that I'll include that in my email to y'all. Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else want to speak tonight about this subject?
I did want to say one thing on the definition, as far as, and Beach and I like to quote the Supreme Court a lot. Supreme Court on the issue of when they were talking about banning pornography, they said the court knows pornography. When we see it, we don't need to define it. So that's an option that we could take too. We know what we think of as a data center, so trying to weasel out of having some type of definition and pigeonhole us in, that may be an option as well.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Anybody else, it's open for anybody wanting to comment. Okay, no one else wants to comment, so it's in the council's hands to discuss it further and see perhaps which direction we're going to take tonight.
Mayor, I'd like to just go ahead and make a motion, and then we can have more discussion if we need to, but a motion to refer this proposed ordinance to the Planning Commission, an ordinance imposing a 150-day moratorium on the acceptance, processing, and approval of applications for the development or expansion of data centers of any size, all private utilities, all private utility buildings, and all data storage facilities within the jurisdiction of the city of LaGrange, Kentucky.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Jason Taylor, second by Lucy Ricketts. Any further discussion by the city council members at this time? Motion made, second. Roll call vote, please, Heather.
Councilmember Bishop,
Yes.
Councilmember Ricketts,
Yes.
Councilmember Kenter,
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Davenport,
Yes.
Councilmember Powell,
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Jason, did you mention the actual number of days?
I did, 150.
Okay.
Yes, for the record.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. Thank you all.
Is that it? We adjourn?
Yep. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
Aye. Woo!